Good evening, welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Leeson here. Today's top stories. England will enter the next phase of lockdown easing this coming Monday. And the social distancing rule may be scrapped in June. Holidaymakers can soon use an NHS app to prove their vaccination status when travelling abroad. And some Eastern European NATO members are calling for more troops on the bloc's east flank in response to Russia's actions. Boris Johnson confirms the next step of England's lockdown easing. Pubs and restaurants will open indoors from next Monday. He said the 1 metre plus rule may be scrapped on June 21st. NTD's Jane Worrell has more.
England will move to the next step of easing restrictions on Monday. It means people can have a pint or a meal indoors or stay overnight at a friend's place. But dancing at weddings is banned.
And when it comes to social distancing from June the 21st, I look at the data very carefully, and I think at the moment it looks to me as though we may be able to dispense with the 1 metre plus rule. That's not yet decided. It's not yet clear. We'll have to wait and see.
He said hugging your loved ones is a personal choice, but to think carefully. England's chief medical officer says there are concerns over the growing number of cases of the variant that originated in India.
This is actually spreading from very small amounts, but it is beginning to spread in certain parts of the country, and we need to keep quite a close eye on this. So the point about this is the threats are significantly reduced, but there are still some residual issues that we need to keep a very close eye on, and therefore we need to go carefully and steadily, as the Prime Minister has said.
While the ban on international travel on Monday will be lifted, people will be encouraged to only go to countries on the green list. However, the countries on the list, like Portugal and Gibraltar, have their own restrictions. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
The government's shopping list of laws for the next year is put before Parliament. With the pandemic receding, the focus now is on levelling up the country.
Every year, the Queen's speech lays out the government's list of bills for the year. Last year, it was cancelled as the government wrestled with the first wave of the pandemic. Now it's back.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government's priority is to deliver a national recovery from the pandemic that makes the United Kingdom stronger, healthier and more prosperous than before. To achieve this, my government will level up opportunities across all parts of the United Kingdom.
The Queen's speech includes bills for reforming post-16 education, reducing asylum seekers crossing the Channel, and plans to ramp up house building. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that the plans were for unleashing our nation's full potential.
My government will strengthen and renew democracy and the Constitution. Legislation will be introduced to ensure the integrity of elections, protect freedom of speech, and restore the balance of power between the executive, legislature, and the courts.
The government also unveiled plans to scrap the Fixed-Term Parliament Act. That means that the government will be able to call early elections once again. In total, the Queen's speech laid out 30 bills.
The ban on overseas travel will be lifted this coming Monday for people in England. The government says they can use an NHS app to prove they are fully vaccinated when travelling abroad.
Health Secretary Matt Hancock says holidaymakers who have had both doses of a vaccine can use the NHS app to prove their status to other countries. Downing Street says by the time the ban on foreign travel is lifted on Monday, the app will be able to show a user's vaccination status. The NHS app is different from the COVID-19 app and is currently used to book medical appointments and order repeat prescriptions. To use the NHS app, people must be registered with a GP in England and aged 13 or over. The government recommends registering on the NHS app before booking international travel and at least 2 weeks before departure date. Those who don't have a smartphone can call the NHS helpline on 119 for Monday and ask for a letter to be posted to them. But people need to wait at least 5 days after completing their course of vaccination before requesting the letter, which can take a further 5 days to arrive. The government website asks people not to contact their doctor's surgery about their vaccination status, as it says GPs can't provide these letters.
Romania's president told US President Joe Biden that more NATO troops are needed on the alliance's eastern flank. That's in response to Russia's actions that many see as threatening to the region.
Eastern European NATO members want a bigger Allied military presence on the bloc's eastern flank in response to Russia's actions. That's the message from a regional NATO meeting on Monday, hosted by the Romanian and Polish presidents.
As allies on the eastern flank, we need to continue consolidating deterrence and defense. We all recently witnessed the worrying military build-up by Russia in our close neighborhood in the Black Sea, in and around the Ukraine.
In April, Russia amassed tens of thousands of troops at the border with Ukraine. NATO said it was the largest build-up since 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea. The Polish president said he was relieved Russia had pulled back many of the forces, saying he believed that reduced the risk of another Russian invasion. The countries at the meeting form the Bucharest Nine, an initiative that brings together Eastern NATO members that were all controlled by Moscow during the Cold War. Today, they're all members of the European Union and NATO. Most of them share a concern about Russia's attempts to reassert its influence over their region. US President Joe Biden, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, and other leaders joined the meeting via video conference. The goal of the summit was to coordinate their security positions ahead of a full NATO summit in June. At that meeting, leaders planned to discuss the tense relationships with Russia and China, the troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the future of the 30-nation alliance.
So-called crash for cash insurance fraud accounts for as many as 120,000 claims per year. That's according to investigations by a non-profit watchdog, the Insurance Fraud Bureau, or IFB. Crash for cash is an insurance scam in which fraudsters invent or deliberately cause road crashes. Data released by the IFB reveals the regional hotspots for the scam. Birmingham takes the top 3 spots, with Bradford following after. Motor insurers say the scam pushes up premiums across the board. With lockdown easing, the IFB warns that crash for cash fraudsters may look to make up for lost time as more drivers return to the roads. And in other news, Apple is facing legal action in the UK that claims it's abusing the dominant position of the App Store. The claim says nearly 20 million UK users could be eligible for compensation.
Apple is facing a legal claim that says it's breaking UK competition law by overcharging millions of people. The tech giant is accused of deliberately shutting out the competition in its store. It also forces people to use its own payment processing system, and that generates excessive profits. The claim says Apple's developer commission of up to 30% is unfair. The UK collective action has been brought by Dr. Rachel Kent, an expert in the digital economy and lecturer at King's College London. She says Apple guards access to the world of apps jealously and charges entry and usage fees that are completely unjustified. Last year, a US Congress inquiry estimated that the App Store's annual global revenue was £10.6 billion, with running costs of £71 million. That means revenue was nearly 150 times the cost. The claim says those who purchased apps in the UK since October 2015, some nearly 20 million people, could be entitled to compensation. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
A young minke whale that was stranded in London's River Thames has been put down due to its deteriorating condition. The whale was first spotted on Sunday when it got stuck on boat rollers at Richmond Lock. Rescuers freed it, but it swam in the wrong direction and was found on Monday morning at Teddington Lock. National coordinator at the British Divers Marine Life Rescue Service said the whale was put down by vets from London Zoo. She says something must have happened to separate the whale from its mother or the group on which it depends. So even if the rescuers had managed to get it to the open sea, it would have starved. She also said that whales appear in the Thames every year, but strandings like this are rare. And in other news, a new study shows that almost half of new mums felt depressed during the first lockdown. Researchers believe it's due to reduced social contact.
Researchers believe reduced social contact during lockdown increased the risk of postnatal depression. A new study by University College London shows that almost half of new mums had felt depressed during the first COVID-19 lockdown. That's more than double the average rates for Europe before the pandemic. Researchers surveyed 162 mums in London between May and June 2020. The study finds the more contact new mums had with people, the fewer depressive symptoms they reported. Mothers reported while virtual contact through video calls or phone calls helped, but not enough because friends and family couldn't see them struggling. They felt this amplified the stresses of motherhood. Women with babies aged 6 months or younger described feelings of isolation, exhaustion, worry, inadequacy, guilt, and increased stress. Many worried about the impact of social isolation on their child. Many new mums taking part in the research felt lockdown created a burden of constant mothering without anyone around to help. For the women whose partners were unable or unavailable to help, they felt the negative impacts of lockdown most acutely. Leading author of the study, Sarah Myers, says, "It really does take a village to raise a child, especially in a crisis when everyone is dealing with increased demands." Not everything the new mums surveyed experienced during lockdown was negative. Some said lockdown protected their family time, and others said their partner helped more than without lockdown.
A couple in South London celebrate a remarkable year in building their own grocery business from scratch. Since the first lockdown last year, they've been working flat out to bring their dreams into reality. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us their story.
Life partners Emma Soulsby and Lee Daly are also now partners in a business venture, the magnificent Marrow. Both successful in the floral industry, Emma was due to have a floral installation for her first big celebrity wedding overseas, but then within a week and a half, both of them saw their regular jobs disappear as the first lockdown happened early in 2020. Then they decided to form a business together selling fresh produce. They haven't looked back. Lee talks about why they decided to start Magnificent Marrow.
To help people that were struggling to get food due to the first lockdown. And it was a sort of a success right from the start, really.
Initially, they worked from the back of a van doing 100 local deliveries a day during the lockdown. They soon needed a unit to work from and acquired one in Rains Park where they live. They started offering nationwide courier deliveries and after a few months opened the unit to customers on a Saturday.
We were getting up to sort of 100 people coming up and so we decided to sort of find a local store.
Emma had previously built up 10,000 followers from the wedding world on Instagram and used them to help promote the business, plus some special friends.
All of the celebrities I'd worked with in the past, I was like, please, can you share this new business? And they did, and it was incredible.
Starting a business in lockdown wasn't easy. They couldn't get hold of printer ink, so Emma was handwriting delivery notes at midnight every night. As novice grocers, it's also been a steep learning curve.
This is quite enjoyable for other people, not myself, but understanding little things like potatoes and standing there in front of everybody at the market and they're asking me what size, and I'm just like, that size, I have no idea.
In the early days, they were also doing the deliveries themselves. Although they've moved on, life hasn't got any easier. They get up at 1 a.m, go to the market to buy produce for online orders, then back to the unit to pack the London delivery boxes to be collected at 6 a.m. Then it's off to the shop.
With our team, set up the shop, go home, have 2 hours sleep, get back up, and I'll then start on the wedding side of things.
Emma's wedding floral bookings are coming back, so while she works on those, Lee is working at the shop.
And then we will put the orders in for the shop about 6 o'clock while Lee is thankfully cooking our dinner, and then we crash about 8 o'clock, 8:30, and do it all over again the next day. 6 days a week.
They try to put customer service at the heart of the business.
Everyone that orders from us, everyone that emails us, everyone that gets in contact with us via Instagram or Facebook, it's so important to us. And every
we give
single
a personal response.
Yeah.
Making strong connections with people helps them too.
When you make a mistake personally, it's hard to get over when you're so tired, but then you've got these amazing bits of these connections that we've made.
Yeah.
It just makes everything so much better.
They've now gone beyond their fruit and veg range to offer products from London-based artisan suppliers, including meat, bread, cakes and cheese. Gift hampers are also available. They are supported by a dozen staff who Emma says have their backs, and without them they wouldn't have been able to achieve what they have. Going forward, Emma plans to continue with her wedding floral business, as well as joining Lee to create more stores and expand the magnificent Marrow grocery business. The number of regulars here is growing, and the ranges too. When it comes to fruit and veg, they know their onions. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Rains Park, London.
Still to come, EU leaders doubt the US proposal to force drug companies to waive their COVID-19 vaccine patents. There's that and more when we return.